and welcome. I'm super excited to be here today because I have a fantastic guest, Alex Kubiak. She is from Startpage, which is the world's most private search engine. And she's really focused on leading this company and is passionate about data, privacy, UX, and has a background in product primarily focused on search products. So I know we all are using search products every day, and a growing concern more and more is the privacy behind those. So I'm really excited about this conversation and just want to welcome Alex.
Thanks so much for having me, Sadie.
Yeah, so Alex, search one thing is interesting and I feel like a difficult field to get into, but even, private search is really new. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and how you found yourself in this industry.
Sure. So my background actually started, in college, I majored actually in computer science at Princeton. And so I started very much from the technical front. And it wasn't until after I left college that I started to move more in the product direction, because I was just really interested in users, how to make products that are really good for people. I had a lot of commentary on the products I used every day. So I just really liked being in the middle of everything, working with developers, but also working with users, marketing, business, etc. And I've always been very personally privacy focused. And I think I come from a family who everyone really cared about personal privacy there. We had our identity stolen at one point. So I think after that, my parents started to instill in me more of a caution of keeping your personal data to yourself if you don't really need to share something. So I had worked in search engines product for a few years. And then in the last couple of years, I moved into a role at Startpage, which I felt was a fusion of all the things I have been interested in: search, which I was good at, data, privacy, which I cared about. And I've learned a lot definitely about how frighteningly personal search history is and how important it is. And right now, in today's cultural and political climate, I feel like spreading the word about search privacy is, paramount.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'd love if you could, talk a little bit more about what makes a private search versus a non-private search, and, what are some of the things you should be concerned of? You talked about how your family unfortunately had got their identity stolen. Like, would that happen if I use a non-private search? What are some of those differences and things, we should be concerned about?
Sure. So when I think about how I use a search engine, it's pretty much stream of consciousness, things that I'm looking up through the day. So your history put together can be formed to create a frighteningly accurate picture of you, and probably more than even your family or friends know about you, since it's everything that you want to know or you're thinking about at a given time. So a lot of data is collected through that process in non-private search engines: your device, the browser you're using, your IP address, but combined with things like the websites you're clicking on, maybe even the emails that you have on your phone, the photos you've taken, the places you've gone, how much you spend in a month. Then that information can be used to manipulate you by targeting you with ads and content. One thing that there have been studies on is targeting people that have depression to shop more, which is extremely manipulative of someone's mental health. Placing price trackers on you. If you have an iPhone, people assume you have a higher salary and can afford more, and maybe they'll raise flight prices for you specifically versus someone without an iPhone. So a lot of this, a search engine is free oftentimes, so you are not you're not really the customer. You're the product, and you're providing the data. And then the data is sold to people who are the actual customer of the search engine. So that's kind of how non-private search engines work. Startpage works such that we have a contract to serve Google results. So you would see very similar to what you would see on google.com. However, we don't have to send any user data. So we can protect everything and erase everything before making the request to Google. So when you visited startpage.com, you would see the exact same results that anyone else in the world searching at that time would see. And that gives it removes the profiling that a non-private search engine would do about you. And then you escape the bubble of filtered results that you would be trapped in otherwise.
Yeah, so I've kind of performed my own test once because I felt you said something really interesting about this bubble of results, right? Where I felt like my results are getting more and more tailored to me. And so I mean, as it was nice, but I'm someone who loves to expand my horizons. I want to read opinions from different sides of the aisle, and I felt like I wasn't getting that anymore. And so I actually created a whole nother account just to see, like, is this true? And I was getting different results, and it frightened me a bit because, you know, unless I'd done that research, like I wouldn't have known that like I wasn't seeing all the results. I mean, long-term thinking, as results get more and more tailored to us, do you think it's not only causing us problems to be manipulated, you know, in terms of buying things, but also in a way narrowing our worldview of, you know, what opinions and experiences and things we may see just to reinforce our own maybe biases or non-biases?
It absolutely does that. That especially like when you're looking at something like political news, it will funnel you into, we know what your preferences are. Let's show you things that are supporting candidates that you probably support and making fun of candidates that you don't support, and just kind of burrowing you deeper and deeper into your own beliefs. So that absolutely does happen.
Yeah, and that scares me so much because, you know, I have a psychology background, and they talk in psychology a lot about this confirming bias, right? Where we look for things that support our argument, and then it's really hard to break that down. And so, I mean, do you, not that I like to get into politics, but do you think that because everything is digital and we feed information that confirms our opinion, that's part of the reason we may have more conflict today in the US or other countries, where people aren't seeing other sides of the aisle? Could it be from some of these types of unsafe private, you know, search engines that are out there?
It may very well be part of it. People are, you know, we're not really used to getting the same newspaper on our doorsteps as everyone else because, like you said, we're getting these targeted snippets of the news. So it's very hard for people to switch sides of the aisle now. Maybe it's not contributing to the reasons why someone's supporting one side in the first place, but it makes it ever so harder for someone to expand their horizons and potentially switch opinions. So exactly the confirmation bias, like you were saying.
Yeah, so let's talk about what we can do about it. I'm all about let's be productive, right?
Yes.
So are there tools that we can use to ensure, you know, better privacy online, and where does, and also like, am I going to give up functionality? Because now I'm used to these services, right? So I want to keep that functionality, but I also want to maintain, you know, my privacy. How do I do that?
Right. Like, I don't think we're asking anyone to completely give up social media or limit their scope in that way, but it's all about finding where you're comfortable. An example that I think about is try and be more conscious of when you're giving data, just in the sense that if someone on the street said, hey, what's your social security number? You wouldn't tell them. But it's second nature to enter data into forms on a website. And you don't really think about the fact that even though it's obscured from you, it is people looking at your data and making assumptions about you. So the first step that I try to do, and also to encourage other people to do, is just be conscious of what you're doing and try and take things that you see with a grain of salt, because understand that you're that you might not be the intended customer, as I was saying, but also that you might be in this bubble. So some other things to do besides using a private search engine would be maybe look up the privacy policies of the hardware you use. I know Apple recently has done a lot of work into trying to make their privacy policy more robust, but obviously, you know, all of them have their flaws. Being conscious of it is the first part, and understanding, even if you use a private search engine, if you're using a certain type of phone, that phone is probably capturing data on top of that. So the consciousness is the best part, because it's really hard to be completely private if you're not using your own hardware on your own VPN, etc. And even then, you have such a unique signature that it's very easy to pinpoint who you are in that case. So just the consciousness, I think, is a good step one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess my concern on the consciousness is I start to look at the terms and conditions and I'm like, I don't have all night to read this and I'm not a lawyer. So are there certain things when just to be a more conscientious consumer that you yourself look through as you're reading, or even kind of skimming possibly some of those terms and conditions?
I do tend to lean on also external publications to do summaries and analyses of comparing different companies, because these terms and conditions are meant for us not to read through. And I can say that I've definitely had to supplement with external information. But even just reading about, like there's a really good book that I like, Data and Goliath, that is a great supplement to just opening your eyes on what people are using data for. Even if you're not going to read every word of your privacy policy, just having that consciousness around you when you're typing something in or creating a new profile, et cetera, or reading your Twitter news, even all of that, just being conscious that that might not be the whole story and that someone might be taking your info from you.
Awesome. That's great. It's good to know that, even people like yourself use other resources, that we all need a little help through these different things. And I definitely recommend people. I'm going to go check out the book, David and Goliath, or Data and Goliath. It sounds fantastic. So, just want to transition a little bit more then into, we've talked about other companies collecting data, but, going into what data does Startpage collect, if any, and why do they do it? Because not all data collection is bad, I'm sure. So,
Sure.
what does Startpage collect and why?
So Startpage actually removes pretty much all data besides like your device type, so we know what kind of page to render to you. Are you on a phone versus a laptop? But we're removing basically everything. Understood that not all data is bad, but in this situation we don't really need it to serve you equivalent results. Normally it's helpful for doing targeting or other optimizations, even if it be like, we understand you're on a specific type of a device, so let's show you slightly different content on the page, which isn't necessarily malicious, but we try and keep the experience the same for everyone. So we're throwing away everything in the first layer. We have a multi-layer server infrastructure, and in the first layer, we remove and anonymize all the data. And that's before we do any calls to our own search infrastructure or to Google servers, so that a user can feel comfortable that by the time we're engaging third parties, there's nothing personally identifying going forth. We don't even store the query ourselves. Obviously, we need to pass the query on to Google to tell you what to get back, but we're not saving that at all. So I couldn't tell you what people are searching for, even if I tried.
Awesome. No, it's nice. First of all, for me personally, it's just nice to even know that there are companies out here who do this and that it's an option. I think sometimes it can be discouraging just to feel like, well, Google is the only option. And, I've tried Bing and I don't even know if it's better, but I felt like the results weren't as good, right? So it's just great to know that there is a path forward and it's not sacrificing any functionality other than being possibly targeted for ads. So
and I will say that, so Startpage is based in the Netherlands, and a lot of European companies, specifically Dutch, have more focus on privacy. So that might be another thing I would encourage, is to look at European-based companies, because the laws like GDPR are a lot more protective of the consumer than those in the US. So European companies have your back a lot more.
Awesome. That's a good tip. Help us cut through all the reading of the laws. So, given that this is Women in Data, I'd love to talk a little bit about, the importance of this for women. So, women are well aware of, being vulnerable in real life situations, right? And not putting themselves in harm's way. But now that so many of us are in the digital space, is there even a more concern for women with privacy and the use of search in this area?
I think I have a couple answers. One, definitely, like when someone makes an assumption that you're a woman online, they'll probably target you with different things, which is something that we probably don't want. We want an equivalent experience to anyone else on the web. But second, I'm sure women are a lot more conscious in real life of the info we're giving out, because you don't want to be followed home or something else. And it's harder to feel that sense of fear on the internet because it feels so anonymized. So that's a really good point. It's something to be more conscious of, is that you going to like the dry cleaner and saying, I'm going to be gone for a week, and they know where you live or something, that's something that you might be not as comfortable sharing. But on the web, if you're posting on Twitter that you're so excited for your vacation, it's just as dangerous for your home to get broken into. So it's harder to, I guess I would say, you need to be a lot more conscious of what you're doing on the internet, because it feels so much safer than speaking with someone face to face. So yeah, that's a really good point.
No, that's good to know. Yeah, I think that anytime, we're working in this digital space, it's hard to keep that still human presence involved, right? That there's human people on the other end reading it or seeing it. And I would love to think that every person is a good person, is going to do great things with that information. But fortunately, sometimes that's not the case. So I think that's a great point to keep in mind. So this was a fantastic conversation. I really learned a lot in terms of resources, and I'm so excited that Startpage is out there. Are there any questions that I haven't asked that you would think would be a great question for me to ask you?
Maybe the only other thing I'll add is a interesting plug about Startpage is another feature we have that's unique is called Anonymous View, which allows you, once you find a search result on the search page, to click in and visit that page through a proxy frame. So you're allowed to continue browsing in privacy and the website will only see that Startpage is visiting them, not that you are visiting them. So that's one feature that I do use a lot to kind of extend the privacy from the search engine into my browsing. So just wanted to give that a quick shout out as something that is one of my favorite things about Startpage.
I love that. Yeah, I think, not that anyone's doing a lot of flying right now, but I know a lot of people have been well aware of once you look for tickets online and then you come back, they'll raise the price. So it'd be great if we can have Startpage go and look for the first few times for us before we come back and have to pay more. So definitely when this is all said and done with COVID, make sure you're using that functionality so you're getting the best deal.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being here. This has been fantastic. We'll definitely add, some links to the website and additional information for people to go check out. And yeah, I think you just helped me get a lot more private in my searches and my work online. So appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Sadie.